Yo, hello, my name is Westbam and welcome to another Cinema 4D tutorial. In today's lesson I want to show you how to make this seamless looping tunnel effect. It is ridiculous easy to do, and once you understand the trick behind it, I'm pretty sure you can make a lot more tunnels. The seamless looping part is done in After Effects, so I will show that in the end. The tunnel consists of a few elements. I think I used 6 here. I'm using a texture that has a Fresnel shader and a lot of reflectivity in the reflectance channel. To get the center part a bit darker, so you can't see it that far in the distance, I'm using an environment and I enabled a fog and I made the fog black. And the easiest way to do all this is that you need a cloner object inside your Cinema 4D version. And if you have a cloner object, well, let's jump right into Cinema 4D and let's start making this thing. Well, first things first, I'm going to change my render settings. I'm going to make it 720p, because that's a lot easier for me to work with. That's 700 by 1280. To make this tunnel, we're going to do it in a few steps. And the first step is to make the objects. It's just a cube, so let's make a cube. And I put the cube inside a cloner. And for the cloner, I'm going to set it to radial. And the cube, well, I think I need it a bit smaller, a bit lower. So let's decrease the Y size to around 10. Let's add some fillet because it looks nice, and a radius of 1 and a subdivision of 1. I think it's okay, and it renders faster, so that's good. Jump back to the cloner and let's scale her up a bit, and boom, here we have our first tunnel element. Now, in order to keep things more clear for me, I'm going to put everything in a null object. So I'm going to select the cloner and the cube, press Alt G. Now it's inside a null. And if I double click on my null, I can name it, so this is number 1. And we got one element of our tunnel done. Well, let's make another element. I'm going to simply duplicate this element, so I'm just going to drag it down holding Control. So Control, drag, and you made a copy. Open the copy up, change some settings, maybe make it a bit bigger. Go to the cube, change some settings over there. And this is the part where you can be creative and go all crazy. So we got 2 tunnel elements already done. Let's name this number 2. And let me make another copy of the first one. Now, since we are working with a cloner object, we can also use these MoGraph effectors. And one of the cool ones I like to use is the step effector. I'm going to put a step effector inside my cloner null, so I know it fits with this cloner. And let me see if it's affecting anything. No, it isn't, so I need to drag it in. The step effector by default in the parameter tab, it's set to scale. I want to set it to position. And I only want to change the Z position, like so. And maybe now we can go back to the cloner, change some more settings for the object, and go to the cube, change some more settings for the cube. You know, just go crazy and be creative. And here we have element number 3. Let's make another copy of this. And you can also do, I don't know, long cubes. So I'm going to simply drag these out, make them very small, and go to the cloner, and I'm going to make it all a bit bigger, like so. Maybe add a few more clones, I don't know. Tunnel element number 4. Of course, you don't only want to use cloned cubes, you can use whatever you want. You can use a sweep, or booleans, or whatever. So let's try a boolean for once. Gonna make a cube, and of course I want to make it lower again. And with some fillet of 1 and 1. Scale her up a bit. I don't know where this is going, and this is just freestyling. I'm totally freestyling, this is not scripted. Next I'm going to put that into a bool object. So let's make a bool, put the cube in there, and then I want to bool it with a cylinder. So put the cylinder inside the bool, reverse the order, and here I got a cube with a hole in it. Now if I change the cylinder radius, I can make the hole bigger or smaller. And if I now clone this boolean in a circular shape, we got another tunnel element done. So the bool goes inside the cloner. The cloner, well, we're going to set it to radial, change the radius, change the spread count. And of course we can also do other funky stuff. We can go to the transform tab and rotate our cube. And I think I want to rotate it on the P position, so it's coming towards us. This could be cool, I don't know. I'm just freestyling here. And of course we can also clone the cloner, so let's make another cloner. Put the cloner with the boolean in there. And this cloner I'm going to clone over the Z-axis. And we got another tunnel element done. So let's put this tunnel element in a null. Select the cloner and hit Alt-G to group it in a null. And this is number 5. Well, as you can see, you can make a lot of tunnel elements rather fast. So let's make another one. Let's do this one special. I'm going to grab a helix. I'm going to make it a bit higher. So the height is going to change a bit. Jump in the top view. This is my helix. Could be nice, I don't know. And I'm going to put my helix inside a sweep. Now, what are we sweeping it with? I don't know. Let's grab a rectangle, put that in the sweep as well. And now it looks a bit like this. So let's change the rectangle size to something smaller. And here we have another tunnel element. Now I think I want to have this helix outside my tunnel, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't look so cool if you move through it like this. So just select the helix and change the end and start radius until it's outside your tunnel. And here you can see I made a little error for my rectangle. I need to change the orientation of my rectangle. So XY is good for now, so this looks okay. You could give it some rounding, but I'm not gonna bother. Or whatever, a rounding of 1, why not? To catch some highlights later on. And I think I need to change the end radius so it's outside my tunnel. And here I have another tunnel element, so I can simply select the sweep, hit Alt-G, group it, and this is number 6. Now I can continue doing this forever, but I'm pretty sure you're all wondering how I made this seamless looping tunnel. So these are the elements. Now let's start building our tunnel. And to do that, I need another MoGraph cloner. I'm gonna drag all my elements inside my cloner. And for the cloner, I only want to clone it in the Z direction. Like so. And we need a lot more clones because we want to make a tunnel. Now the way to look at your tunnel is from the top view. So just middle mouse click on the top view. And let's zoom out a bit. And I'm using 1 to move around. As you can see, the distance between the individual elements is a bit big. So let's lower that to something that looks cool. And here we have our tunnel. Well, it's a bit repetitive for my taste. So I'm gonna jump back to the top view. And if you set the clones from iterate to random, all the tunnel elements will be cloned random over the z-axis. And if you don't like what you're seeing, just change the seed value. Every time I change the seed value, I get a different looking tunnel. Well, I think this is cool for now. Before I make my camera animation, I first want to make a material. So just double left click on your material slot, open her up. We're not going to use color, but we're just going to use luminance and reflectance. Now in our reflectance channel, I'm going to add a Fong. And now it's totally reflective. I don't want that, so I'm going to lower it to somewhere around 80. Next I'm going to click on my luminance channel, and in the texture I'm going to add a Fresnel. Now as you might see, you got this nice white glow on the outside, and that's made by this gradient. So black is reflective. I don't want a white glow, I want to make a color, so I'll just double click on this gradient, and here I can change the knots. Now if I change the white knot to a color like purple, my texture is looking like this. And if we put the black knot in a bit, the purple edge is a bit more narrow, and I think that's nicer later on. But you can tweak this whatever you want. You can add more colors and make it rainbow-like, but I'm gonna keep it like this for now. So my material is done, and I can put it on the cloner. And let's make a quick test render, and let's see where we are. Well, it's a bit ugly on the edges over here, and I think that's mostly because of the anti-aliasing that's not present. But another way, and a more powerful way to fix this, is just go to the render settings and change the renderer from standard to physical. And if you now render this out, everything is way more crisp, smooth, and anti-aliased. Okay, this is cool. Let's make a camera so we can see and look inside our tunnel. So I'm gonna make a camera. I'm gonna look through my camera, and in the coordinates tab of this camera, I'm gonna zero everything out. So X is 0, Y is 0, this 0, no rotations. And now I'm at the center of the world, looking straight into my tunnel. Now let me quickly make another renderer so you can see where the problem is. The problem is that right over here in the distance, we are seeing all the elements of our tunnel. that are still coming towards the camera. And I don't want that. I want my elements to be fading in. And the easy way to do that is to add an environment. So I'm going to add an environment. And all I have to do now is enable the fog. But I want my fog to be black, so I'm just going to select the color and make it a black color. And if you render now, it already is a lot better. Now, if you don't want to see these things as well, you have to play with the fog distance. Fog distance is how far can we look inside the fog before everything is gone. If we lower this value to something around, I don't know, this is just really trial and error, we can start changing the way our tunnel is fading in or out. Maybe 5000 is cool. If you render now, you see the center parts, they are gone. And this will be the final look of our tunnel. Now one more thing, if you want to have a feeling of size, you need to change the focal length of your camera. If you put it at something like a wide angle, the tunnel feels a lot bigger if you fly through it. Now I'm looking at the tunnel and I'm thinking it's still a bit boring. And since this is a cloner, I can simply add a MoGraph effector. And let's do a random effector, because I want to rotate it randomly. So go to the parameters, nothing for position, just for rotation. And I think I need the B for banking. So a random amount of degrees, but now my tunnel is rotated at a random way. And I think this looks way more cool. Okay, we are getting there. Now one last step to do is make a camera animation. So select your camera, go to the coordinate step. And the only thing I want to animate is the Z coordinate. And if I drag here on the Z, you can see a bit the animation we are going for. We go inside the tunnel all the way to the end. I think it's pretty cool. Nice. Now, in order to loop this later in After Effects, I want my first shot to be black, so there's no elements inside, and my last shot to be black. And this way we can make the looping overlap very easy in After Effects. So on my first keyframe, frame number 0, I'm going to pull my camera all the way back until I see nothing. No more purple and no more reflections. And I think around here everything is gone. This is nice. So I can put a keyframe over here for the first frame. Now next I need to add some more frames. I'm gonna make 500 frames. Totally arbitrary, but I hope I will end up with more than 300 for my looping. So my tunnel lasts more than 10 seconds. So let's go to the last frame and let's zoom in all the way through our tunnel until we reach the end of it. So it's a long tunnel, but we're almost there, I'm sure. And I think if you hold down Shift, you can move faster, but I think this is the last element, so right around here, when it's out of the picture, I'm gonna set another keyframe. Now, one last annoying thing, by default my keyframe interpolation is set to spline, but I want to have it linear. And now to fix that, you just simply right-click on your keyframe track, this is the Z, and then you go to Animation, Show Track, this screen pops up, and I'm simply gonna select my camera, so all my keyframes are selected, and I'm gonna change it to linear. My animation is linear, and my camera speed should be constant throughout my tunnel. So we can close up the timeline, and if we now scrub to our animation, we can see a bit what we are doing. So let's press play for one preview to see if the speed is correct or too slow or whatever. And let me pause here at a random position and render it out. Well, and here you have one random frame of our random tunnel. And if you think, there's too much purple in there, well, I think you're right. So I'm gonna duplicate my material, holding down the Control key. I'm gonna drag my material to the right. I made a copy. And with this copy, I'm gonna click on the material and I'm gonna change the color purple to something different. I don't know, orange, why not? And now I'm going to put this orange material to one of these elements. I don't know, this is totally random, but let's see how it looks now. So we got some purple elements and we got some orange elements. And if you want, you can go crazier, add more colors. But for now, I think this is good. One more thing for the camera. I think I want to have it rotate a bit. So let me select the camera And how do I want to rotate it? Well, think like so, but slowly. So I'm just going to jump to the beginning, add the keyframe, jump to the end, add a random value, not too much, and let's jump to the beginning again, press play, and here we have our final animation. Well, you can of course make more elements, tweak the cloner until your heart's content, but the idea is of course just to make some elements, clone them over the Z-axis, get a camera, animate it through the camera, use the environment to make the first and the last scene black, and also the center hole over here, and then you can do what you want. But yeah, all you have to do now is of course save your work, so save as. Let's give it a name, I don't know, tunnel number 2. And go to the render settings, and for the output of course you have to give it a name and a location. So over here in the tutorial folder in the render, I'm gonna save my end result. I leave everything as is, and I think it's okay for now, except for the output. I want to render all the frames. This is set correctly, my resolution is set correctly, my output has a name. So I think we're ready to render to picture viewer, and here we go. Now the good news is, because we are using only primitives and nothing is made editable, it renders rather fastly, and I see you all in After Effects in a while. So here we are in After Effects, and let me show you how to loop our render and make it look cool. First things first, click on File, Import, File, and then you browse to the folder where you have saved your renders, and just select one of them and be sure that the sequence toggle is enabled. Just gonna click import now, and here is my file. Now before you continue, you have to be sure that the frame rate is the same as the frame rate you use to render it out. In my case it's 30 frames per second, and this is good. If your frame rate isn't correct, you just right click on your sequence, go interpret footage, click on main. This screen pops up, and assume this frame rate is set to 30, and you can change it over here. Well, let's drag this inside a new comp and let's make a loop. This is the thing I rendered, and I made a slight change for the spiral because I wasn't too fond of it. And the way we're gonna loop this is we're gonna cut it in half, reverse it, and then the black parts will be faded in and out. It's really easy. So let's find a nice first frame here. I think this is a good place to split our file. What you do now, you make sure your layer is selected, go to edit and say split layer. And now it made a copy, one for the right side and one for the left side. We're simply gonna reverse it, and if you hold down shift while dragging to the left, it should snap to the beginning. It snapped there. And the bottom one, well, I'm just gonna drag it to the right over here somewhere, because somewhere over here is our overlap we're going to use. And in order to see our overlap, we have to change the blending mode. By default it's set to normal, but if I change it to add, we can see the top and bottom parts together. So now I can just drag my bottom layer and find a nice place to loop it. And you can adjust this however you like it. And in the end you don't even see it, because we set our camera speed at a constant velocity. I think this is a nice edit over here somewhere, yep. Now one last thing, to finish our loop we need to reduce the comp length, and that's simply by going to the end of this layer. Then I'm gonna drag in the work area, holding down the shift it will snap and snap. And if I now right click, I can do trim comp to work area. And here we have our perfect seamless looping tunnel. Now to prove it, let me render this out for you. I'm going to press the spacebar. And around here is the fade, I think. And here comes the loop, and you didn't see a thing because it's a perfect loop now. Okay, cool. Let me rename the composition. Just select the composition, hit the enter key, and I'm going to call this loop. And I'm going to drag this loop inside a new comp. And this will be my main comp, so I'm gonna hit enter again, and I type in main. And I always like to use a underscore, so it's on top of the stack if I sort by name, and I can always find it. Okay, let's open the main up, and let's make it look a bit prettier, because I think it's a bit too dark now, but that's because of the fog that we added. So to fix that, I'm gonna add a curves effect. Color correction curves, and I'm gonna drag it onto my composition, and I'm gonna make a little bump over here to increase the highlights a bit, make it a bit brighter, like so. Now the next step to make it look cool, I'm just gonna add a simple glow on there as well. Just the default stylized glow from After Effects. and by default it's not looking that good. And I really never understood how to use glow until I found out that if you lower the threshold, you can get this nice glow. Change the glow radius a bit, or the glow intensity. Now by default it's set to original colors. I don't want it, I want to set it to the AB colors, and these are white and black. So let me change the white to something, I don't know, orangey. And let's tweak the values a bit more until it looks cool. And this is of course all up to you, but it's already rather spooky this way. I think this is nice, so let's keep it. And the reason I'm making these tunnels is because for VJing, that's providing visuals at a party, at a dance event or a cooperative event or whatever. And looking at this while listening to music is, I think, very pleasing. Now, one more effect we can do some distortion, for example, the bulge. So I go to the bulge effect. Distort bulge, drag it on there as well. This is the area where we get the bulge, so let's increase it a bit. The thing is now there's a little hard edge over here and you can see exactly where the bulge is happening. So to fix that I'm going to taper it a bit. 75 pixels, I'm not sure, but this looks nice, always does. And this is with the bulge and this is without the bulge. So it makes your tunnel even look bigger. Pretty cool. One other thing we can do to distort it is we can add a wave. A simple wave warp. Now the default settings aren't that spectacular, I think. I think the waves are way too fast and too big. So let's make these waves a bit wider. So we'll increase the width. And I think we can decrease the height a bit. And now it's just a very subtle effect. You won't even see it unless you are looking at this element right over here. It should be a straight line. But because of the wave warp, you got this nice wavy shape in here. Now I got one little problem for the wave world, and that's these white things over here. And that's because the wave is just warping the entire image. And I don't want that. And there's no real way to fix that inside wave warp. But a cool trick I found out is if I make an adjustment layer, so new adjustment layer, and I'm going to copy the wave warp, select it, hit Ctrl C, go to your adjustment layer, hit Ctrl V, and of course I need to disable it over here, so I can either make it invisible or just delete it, and go back to my adjustment layer. It still looks wrong, but we can fix that, because on our adjustment layer I can add a circular mask. You go to this rectangle tool and you select the ellipse tool. Make sure your adjustment layer is selected, and if I now double click on my ellipse tool, I made a perfect screen-sized ellipse, and only inside this ellipse will my wave warp take effect. And once again we have this hard edge over here, wave warp, no wave warp. I want to feather my mask a bit, and to do that I also need to shrink my mask. Now to see what I'm doing, I'm going to fill my adjustment layer with a color, and now I can adjust the mask and I can see exactly where the mask is going. I'm sure there's another button for that. I haven't found it yet, or actually I didn't look for it, because this works for me as well. So the mask expansion, I'm going to drag it down, and now I can feather her up. Now everything of my ellipse is inside the screen, so let me disable the fill. And this is the final thing we want to render. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I showed you how to make tunnel elements, I showed you how to make a tunnel, I showed you how to make the environment so everything is black, I showed you how to make this nice Fresnel carried material, and then I showed you how to make a camera animation in Cinema 4D. Then we rendered it out, went to After Effects, and using all these effects we made this composition in the end. Well, I hope you learned something, because making a tunnel isn't that hard. We did this in what, 25 minutes? My name is Westbam, and I see you all next time.